Japan, also called the land of the rising sun, gave us samurais, sushi, sumo wrestling, origami, sake, incredible cuisine, and the Suzuka racetrack. It also gave us one of the most desirable cars ever made. It was a machine forged from the fires of innovation and the dreams of automotive enthusiasts. It's a symphony of speed, a ballet of brute force, and a masterclass in automotive excellence. We all know it as the GTR. While the USSR and America were focused on the space race, Japan was focused on rebuilding and strengthening its economy. The manufacturing industry switched from the war-related items to consumer goods, and its automotive industry was thriving. The most popular car brands were focused on motorsports as a way of showcasing their ability to make fast cars that handle incredibly, and Japanese car brands were no different. Now, before we jump into the story, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. I'd love to hear which cars I should talk about next. The history of the Nissan GTR traces back to the aftermath of World War II, a time when Japan was rebuilding itself and reimagining its future. It was during this transformative period that the Prince Motor Company introduced the first generation Skyline in the late 1950s. Initially conceived as a luxury car, the Skyline was met with a mix of curiosity and excitement upon its release. However, it wasn't until the 1960s that the Skyline would truly make its mark on automotive history. It all started when Prince Motor Company's S54 Skyline 2000 GT was beaten at the Japanese GP in 1964 at the Suzuka racetrack. The Prince Motor Company barely met the requirements for participating as it is, and the track-ready Skyline was far from perfect. To qualify for the race, Prince Motor Company had to make 100 units of the production version, which it did, but only with 2 days to spare. The Skyline had to go through some drastic changes to be able to compete in the race, so Shinichiro Sakurai and his team went to work. The car had to be extended by 20 centimeters to fit the larger engine, so its balance was off and the handling became terrible.
ボディもここはちぎって20センチ伸ばしたような状態で来たわけじゃん。ね、だからボディとしてはものすごくバランスが悪かったわけじゃん。でしかもタイヤが全然アウトだろ。だから結局もうドリフトする以外は仕方がないその格好になっちゃったわけだ。で要するにそれがタイヤが滑ってくれるからボディの剛性も普通のままで良かったわけだ。
Porsche entered the race similarly to Prince, with its late addition, the 904 Carrera GTS. Prince drivers gave the German car a run for its money, and Tetsu Ikuzawa overtook the Porsche for a lap. Fans at the Suzuka racetrack, as well as all around Japan, went wild. Sunako ended up in second place right after the Porsche 904, placing the Skyline in the history books. Other Skylines that entered the race took 3rd, 4th, and 5th place. After huge success with the Skyline GT 2000, Prince Motor Company decided that a custom-built sports car would help them secure a victory at the Japanese Grand Prix. The R380 was built in 1965. Unfortunately, the 1965 Japanese Grand Prix was never held, allegedly due to a financial dispute between the Suzuka circuit and the Japan Automobile Federation. The Suzuka circuit wanted to raise the hosting fee from 15 million yen in 1964 to 50 million yen for the 1965 season, which wasn't accepted by the federation. The Japan Grand Prix returned a year later, but not before Prince Motor Company merged with Nissan. The original R380 was redesigned and engine power was increased to 220 horsepower. Nissan's R380 won the Japanese Grand Prix. In 1966, Prince Motor Company merged with Nissan, forming a partnership that would change the course of automotive history. With Nissan's resources and expertise behind it, the Skyline underwent a radical transformation. In 1969, the first GTR was born. Based on the third generation Skyline, the GTR was fitted with a 2-liter inline-6 that sent 160 horsepower to the rear wheels through a 5-speed manual gearbox. The GTR was made to be as light as possible, and it performed great on the track. Nissan knew they were onto something, the sedan version of the GTR picked up 33 victories in only 18 months. The two-door coupe that came a bit later continued Nissan's domination, adding 17 more wins by 1972. A popular name for the GTR at the time was Hakosuka, which was a combination of the Japanese words Hako, which means box, and Suka, which is an abbreviation of the name Skyline. When Mazda's RX-3 ended the GTR's winning streak, Nissan decided to counter, creating a new and improved version of the GTR. Unfortunately, the second generation GTR had a very short run. It was released in September of 1972, and production was ceased just a few months later due to the oil crisis. Only 197 units were ever made. Fans of the Skyline GTR had the longest wait of their life because the GTR badge didn't return for 16 fucking years. When Nissan eventually reintroduced the GTR in 1989, it was the one that put the brand on the performance map. Surprisingly, the R32 GTR was heavily influenced by the Porsche 959. Nissan actually bought a 959 and completely gutted it. In the late 1980s, Porsche's all-wheel drive system was top-notch, and Nissan used it to develop its own system. Another influence taken from the 959 is the twin-turbocharged engine. The engine that was used in the R32 GTR was the famous 2.6-liter twin-turbo RB26DETT engine. Official numbers say that the Skyline GTR R32 made 276 horsepower, although unofficially it made more than 300 horsepower. The reason why Nissan advertised the R32 GTR at exactly 276 horsepower is the gentleman's agreement suggested by the Japanese Automobile Manufacturers Association, due to an alarming number of road fatalities. The R32 was originally designed to replace the Skyline GTSR and to dominate Group A racing. Its debut in the world of motorsports was in March of 1990 at the opening race of the All Japan Championship at the Nishi Nippon circuit. For the next 4 years, the R32 GTR was unbeatable, winning every single race in the Japan Touring Car Championship between 1990 and 1993. Aside from completely dominating Japan's Touring Car Championship, the R32 GTR participated in Europe as well as Australia. Nissan's success in Australian motorsport was nothing less than astonishing. The GTR was victorious in 3 Group A championships consecutively between 1990 and 1992, as well as the Bathurst 1000 in 1991 and 1992. Competition just didn't have a weapon against the monster from the land of the rising sun. The local press gave the GTR the nickname Godzilla. The only way to stop the Godzilla was to change the rules in favor of Ford and Holden. The Australian Touring Car Championship disallowed turbocharging and all-wheel drive from the 1993 season, adding the GTR's reign in its tracks. One of the key reasons why the R32 GTR dominated every car it went against was Nissan's ATTESA ETS all-wheel drive system. ATTESA stands for Advanced Total Traction Engineering System for all-terrain, and it allowed the GTR to beat Porsche's lap time at the Nürburgring by more than 20 seconds. Production of the R32 GTR lasted until November 1994. A total of 43,937 units were made.
GTR があることを誇りたい。New GTR デビュー。Drive it, Skyline.
Godzilla's successor came in early 1995 in the form of an R33 GTR. Although the previous generation was considered insanely fast, the R33 set a record lap time at Nürburgring at 7 minutes 59 seconds, becoming the first ever production car to finish a lap at the Nürburgring in less than 8 minutes. The engine in the new GTR was nearly identical to the engine used in the previous version. The new GTR had stronger synchros and a wider oil-pumped drive collar. What made the new GTR faster despite it being heavier and having the same power output than its predecessor is the revised ATTESA all-wheel drive system. The new ATTESA system reacted faster to changing conditions because of the upgraded ECU being able to read sensor readings 10 times faster compared to the previous version of the GTR. A total of 16,668 units were made across all versions of the R33 GTR, with production ending in 1998.
その時空気を味方につけるその時私を解き放つ人に翼をスカイライン GTR 誕生車の喜びを日産です
Starting in early 1999, the new and arguably most popular version of the GTR was introduced. One of my personal favorite JDM cars of all time, and I'm sure there are many of you who will agree, is one of the most tunable cars to exist. Just like the previous versions of the GTR, this one had the same RB26 DETT engine under its hood. The 2.6-liter twin-turbo inline-6, like the previous two versions, was able to put out exactly 276 horsepower from the factory. But there are a bunch of examples where the same engine was able to put out more than 1000 horsepower with a number of mods. The R34 GTR's popularity exploded in 2003, a year after production ended, when the car appeared in the Too Fast, Too Furious movie. The late Paul Walker, who played the role of Brian O'Connor, drove a beautiful R34 GTR in the first race of the movie, beating even its only rival at the time, the Toyota Supra Mark IV. Aside from this, the R34 GTR appears in a number of racing video games such as Gran Turismo, Need for Speed, and many more. The biggest problem with the R34 GTR was that it couldn't be imported to the US completely legally. The same problem existed for the R32 and R33 GTR models. The R32, 33 and 34 GTR didn't comply with US road safety requirements, thus couldn't be legally imported. Hiro Nanohoshi saw this as an opportunity and founded Motorex. Given that the demand for GTRs in the US market was so big, Hiro planned to legalize Skylines, but the process was nothing less than a nightmare. This raised the cost of an R34 GTR to around 80 to 100k. The first couple of imports were done correctly. However, due to extremely high demand of GTRs, Motorex started cutting corners and selling cars without proper documentation. The NHTSA quickly realized what was happening and revoked their registration. Luckily, the owners of questionable GTRs got to keep their cars, unlike many others whose illegally imported cars were seized and even destroyed. Yeah, crushed to bits. The good news is that importing Skyline GTRs is now possible and legal thanks to the 25-year-old import rule in the US. After the R34, Nissan decided to separate the Skyline and GTR badge. Fans had to wait for a couple of years yet again, seeing the debut of the Nissan GTR in 2007 at the Tokyo Motor Show.
It's here. A new supercar for this generation. Introducing the all-new Nissan GTR. Performance enhanced.
In 2008, the new Nissan R35 GTR was available worldwide. Yes, Nissan heard the cry from thousands of fans who were impatient to wait for the GTR to be imported legally. The R35 GTR was a new type of GTR. The famous gentleman's agreement was lifted, so Nissan had the freedom to make the new GTR worthy of its badge. This resulted in a new RB38 DETT engine, a 3.8-liter twin-turbo V6 instead of an inline-6. The interesting thing about these engines is that every single one is hand-built by a very small number of Nissan craftsmen called Takumi. The official numbers in the early years of the R35 GTR say that the engine produced around 480 horsepower, give or less, but with a small margin of error due to the engines being built by hand. The famed ATTESA ETS all-wheel drive system came as standard, helping the new GTR set a lap time at the Nürburgring at 7 minutes 38 seconds, beating the much pricier Porsche 911 Turbo. Surprisingly for a sports car, the R35 GTR didn't come with a manual transmission. Instead, the GTR came with a 6-speed dual-clutch automatic gearbox from Berg-Warner. As soon as it came out, drivers noticed that the automatic gearbox wasn't that bad. It worked perfectly with the ATTESA system, giving the GTR thrilling performance capabilities. Out of all the GTR versions ever made, the R35 was in production for the longest time, starting from 2008 to the present day. During production, there were a number of variants of the GTR, with the 45th anniversary edition being among the most desirable ones. The T-Spec and Nismo Special Editions were the most powerful ones. The R35 has been around for more than 15 years, and we are years away from seeing its successor. The GTR will forever hold its place in car culture, not just as a high-performance car, but as a symbol of pride and technological innovation. Its name, GTR, which stands for Gran Turismo Racing, reflects its racing heritage and its roots in Japanese motorsports. The GTR has achieved a remarkable success on the international stage, from dominating prestigious racing events to its popularity among enthusiasts in markets around the world. The GTR has earned a reputation as a global performance icon. From its groundbreaking ATTESA all-wheel drive system to its cutting-edge aerodynamics, each generation of the GTR has pushed the boundaries of what's possible in terms of performance. One thing is for sure though, the automotive world will forever fear Godzilla.